Hello everyone. Today was a gorgeous day in Batesville, Arkansas, and I felt so blessed to be able to be healthy and to work hard and bless others in one way or another. Every day I make a list of things that I want to accomplish that day, and most of those things I'm able to mark off and complete. There are times that I have to move a task to the next day or even to the next day after that. But it's a great way to stay organized and to feel that I was productive that day. I love seeing a list that's been crossed off. Today, I was able to mark off, read Genesis 38 through 40, and I'm hoping that you're able to do the same thing. And if so, that's great. Keep watching, keep listening to this video. If not, pause the video, read the text, come back, watch the video afterwards. And go ahead, no matter what the case is, like it and share it so other people can enjoy it as well. I think doing that, reading the text, makes this more interactive for you. Now, if you're like me, after reading chapter 38, you're thinking, why is there this much detail included in the Bible? Why does God want me to know these things about these people? While this story is very interesting, it is not immediately apparent why it is included in the Genesis account. It's like you read about Joseph and then you pause and you read this and then you get back to Joseph. So let's talk about that. Let's establish why this is important right now. Perez, the son that's born out of this incident, is an ancestor to King David and of Jesus, the Messiah. Had it not been for the actions of Tamar, Judah's line may have just ended. And that's why this story is so significant. It is another display of God's providence, how He works in the lives of actual real people. Let's briefly talk about what happened in this chapter before we move on to the next chapter and continue on in the story of Joseph. This story begins with an undesirable marriage. Judah marries a Canaanite woman. And if you know anything about this family's history, you know that Jacob and Leah could not have been too keen on this union. You can't help but remember Isaac's words back to his son Jacob in Genesis chapter 28 and verse 1, where he says that you shall not take a wife of the daughters of Canaan. And so that would have been a really bad thing to do. So Judah does that, and then he has his first son named whom he married off to a woman named Tamar. But died at the hand of the Lord because of excessive wickedness. And I don't know exactly what all that entails. I just know that that's what the text says. Judah told his second son, Onan, to assist by helping Tamar conceive so would have a descendant in his name, a practice that would be later included in the Mosaical law. You can read about it in Deuteronomy chapter 25, verses 5 through 10. So Onan took this free pass for personal sexual pleasure and intentionally pulled out at the climactic moment for the purpose of not allowing Tamar to conceive a child. And God considered this act a wicked act, and He killed Onan too. So now both sons, and Onan, have died because of wickedness. Now, on a side note, it's important for us to know that this is not a passage that one can use to condemn masturbation. Sometimes people go to this passage to try to prove that, but the Bible does not address masturbation at all in its text. And if one uses this passage as an example of God's displeasure with this act, then it is being ripped out of its context and applied to something that has nothing to do with it. So let's not do that anymore. Now, back to our story and what actually happened in chapter 38. Judah promised Tamar that his third son would do the surrogate job when he matured, let him grow up first. But he failed to keep this promise after his son was grown, and Judah later referred to his failure to follow through with that commitment as an act of unrighteousness when he says of Tamar in verse 26, she has been more righteous than I. Now, Tamar took this situation into her own hands and disguised herself as a prostitute. Not recognizing her as his daughter-in-law, Judah had sex with her. She does it to bear a son. He does it exclusively for pleasure. More wickedness. Well, then she becomes pregnant with twins. She is given his signet bracelets and a staff as a pledge until she received payment for what she had done as a prostitute. However, after Judah left, she took off her disguise so that the prostitute he slept with would not be found. When Judah heard that Tamar had become pregnant, he became very angry and he called to have her burned. However, before her sentence could be carried out, Tamar produced the signet and the bracelets and the staff, and proving that Judah was the father. And after seeing this, Judah relented because he had originally broken his word and condemned her to be childless. So Tamar was able to go through with it. She was able to give birth to the twin boys, Perez and Zerah. Now, make sure you really remember Perez, because he's in the genealogy, like I said, of Boaz, of King David, of Josiah, and of Jesus. Look back at Matthew chapter 1, verses 1 through 16. You can read all about the people that were born because of this. God is active. That's what we see. That even when we think He's nowhere to be found, He is right there. Now, let's look at chapter 39 and 40, where we see God working in the life of Joseph. Genesis 39 begins with Joseph being sold by the Ishmaelites as a slave to Potiphar, Pharaoh's officer and the commander of the guard in Egypt. He sees that Joseph is successful at whatever he does, and he appoints him as his personal attendant, putting him in charge of his whole household and entrusting him with all of his possessions. However, Potiphar's wife claims that Joseph tried to rape her, and so after he flees and leaves his coat there, he's imprisoned. Genesis 40 is about how Joseph interpreted the dreams of Pharaoh's chief baker and the chief cupbearer while they were in jail. Verse 23 of this chapter describes how the two men's dreams come true after Joseph had interpreted them, one in a positive way and one not so positive at all, really a bad way. This just sets the stage for what happens next. Joseph asked the cupbearer to remember him when he got out of jail and was serving Pharaoh all over again. But I want you to notice how in the last verse, the chief cupbearer did not remember Joseph, but he completely forgot him. But don't worry. Don't worry about that, because God did not forget Joseph when he was placed in a pit by his brothers. God did not forget Joseph when he was enslaved. God did not forget Joseph when he was falsely accused. He did not forget Joseph when he is in prison. And God will not forget Joseph when everyone else did. And guess what? God will not forget you. No matter what you're going through, whatever pit you're in, whatever despair that you're having to deal with, God's not going to forget you. You may think He's far gone away, but He's right there, working in your life. We have to look for it. What a blessing. Tomorrow, pick up your Bibles, cross it off your to-do list, and read chapters 41 through 42. I promise you'll be blessed if you do. See you tomorrow. I love you, and good night.